In our course, we've looked at three different kinds of models: the length model, the discrete model, and the area model. We're going to look in this video at multiplying using two of those models, the discrete model and the area model. If you were multiply with the length model, you would just draw at a certain length, lay them next to each other, add it all up, and that would be multiplying with the length model. It's relatively straightforward. We're going to look at the discrete model and the area model, and we'll start with discrete. Let's go right to it. The idea behind the discrete model is we make a little counter for each item that we have in our problem, whether it's a circle or an X or whatever it may be. And in this particular problem, what we're going to look at is 2/3 times 12. Something we've talked about previously is that times for multiplication is often considered the word of. So what we want here is 2/3 of 12. And with that in mind, when I go to set up my discrete model, I'm going to make 12 items, and we'll go, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And as I look at my picture over there, I can see that I've got 1, 2, 3 rows. Well, I have those 3 rows, and what I want is 2/3 of this. Well, I have 3 rows all together, so 2/3 of it is going to be 2 of those rows. So 2/3 of 12 is right here, and all together I can see I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 2/3 times 12 is equal to 8, and that's multiplying with the discrete model. Something that I see more often than the discrete model for multiplication is the area model for multiplication. And it actually is very cool. I hope you like it. What we're going to look at first here is 3/4 times 2/3 using the area model. What we're going to do is we're going to create a rectangle. And in one direction, I'm going to cut it in fourths, because that's the denominator of one of my terms. And in the other direction, I'm going to cut it in thirds, because that's the denominator of my other term. And then we're going to shade. And so when I shade this thing, I've got 3/4. Well, my fourths are, there's 1, 2, 3, there are my fourths, and I want to shade in 3 of those. So I'm going to shade, I'm going to shade 3/4. Then going the other direction, I've got my thirds are here, and there's my 3/3. I want to shade 2 of those. So I'm going to shade 2 of my thirds. Now what I do, like you might be familiar with from set theory, is I look for the overlap. Where do these overlap? And that's going to be right here. And so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of altogether. How many squares do I have in here? Well, it's 4 by 3, so I have 12. So 6/12 is the result of my multiplication problem. The ones where they overlap divided by how many squares do I have altogether? 6/12. Certainly, you could reduce that to 1/2, and there are other techniques that I'm sure you're familiar with for multiplying fractions, but this area model is one way you can go. Let's look at one more example with that. This time we're going to do 3/5 times 1/2 with the area model. One thing that's really cool about this is kids don't have to know the rule for multiplying fractions to be able to multiply them. And to be honest, using this approach, you can have the kids sort of discover the rule for multiplying fractions. I'll show you what I mean. When we do 3/5 times 1/2, I'll start out with a big rectangle, and I need to cut it in fifths one way. That's not going to be that easy to do, but we'll do our best to try to make our fifths fairly even. So I've cut it into fifths one way. And you can go ahead and do the shading at this point if you want to. You can say, here are my 5/5, and I need to shade 3 of those. So we'll go ahead and shade our 3/5. So there's 3/5 of my diagram. Then going the other direction, I'm going to cut this in half. And I've got my halves are right here. I'm going to need to shade one of those. So I'll go ahead and shade that half. And then my answer to this problem, well, I know the denominator is however many squares I have all together, which is 10. And then the numerator is going to be where do these overlap? And it's right here. So in 1, 2, 3 squares they overlap. So my result is going to be 3/10. And now what you can do is have kids say, hey, look at that. If you just multiply the two numbers on the bottom and multiply the two numbers on the top, you get the answer. You're right. Now we've discovered the algorithm that we're going to use for multiplying fractions, and we can use the area model as a way to show them how to get to it.